Today, I get a chance to talk with a very, very special woman, a woman who was dear to my heart, who has ministered to me with her presence, her history, and her sharing.
Mhm.
This is Heather Jones. Heather Jones is the mama of 12, grandmama of how many grandbabies you got?
We have nine now.
Oh, and it's only growing.
Yep.
And And this is a woman who has lived through beautiful, big things and has like such anyway, I'm just excited
Mm,
you're here. So
I'm
I'm
so
excited to get to
excited to
it.
be here and an honor.
And so Heather, did you always want to have a big family?
I wanted, well, I did. Now, of course, my idea of a big family, was three, four kids. I always wanted a big family. I came from a divorced home. And so I was two when they got married. So I had a brother and a sister. They were older than me. And I was alone a lot growing up just because my siblings were older than me. And I had another friend that had a lot of siblings and I was like, "Oh, that's what I want for my family, to have someday." And so yeah, it was definitely a seed that was planted that I wanted many children. Now, I didn't and I loved babies. Oh my goodness, I loved babies growing up and babysat everybody's kids and so yeah, it was in my heart to be a mom. But 12, no, not, not the root of it, but that was children were always a blessing. And I knew that growing up.
Coming from so your parents got married when you were two, and then did you say that they got divorced? Or
My, my biological dad and my mom were divorced. And then my stepdad, who I grew up with, they got married when I was two.
okay, all
And then
right.
he brought into the family a son and a daughter who were a lot older, not a lot, well, 6 years older than me, and then 13 years older than me. So they were quite a bit older than I was. But we meshed. I was a baby, in their eyes, and just they welcomed me with open arms. And my stepdad was I don't remember life without him. So he was my daddy, and I call him that. So
That's beautiful. And so you went from a family of three kids to
mhm,
five. And so
mhm.
you were the youngest of five.
Yes.
But again, because they were so much older, they probably you didn't experience life with them very much, did you?
No, I was the youngest of three. There was only three of us, a brother, a sister, and me. And um, I didn't I didn't experience a lot of life with them, but what I did experience was kind of hard because they were older and so they were stepchildren. And I saw a lot. It wasn't My childhood was wonderful, but it wasn't easy. And it was a lot of things that, you didn't have social media back then. And thankfully, um, and you just, I think you learn a grace on that. And it taught me a lot as a mom. I think even way back when my mom was a picture and an image of grace, but we had struggles in our family and I saw it, and it gave me compassion and empathy in a lot of ways, but it also very much in my mind had ways that I was not going to do things. And, I had specific things that, nope, won't have that, in my life. And that continued probably a lot of control from a young child. I wanted to control my atmosphere and my surroundings. And my biological dad left my mom and I couldn't for the life of me figure out what I did wrong in that whole story. And I was told when I was 9 that it was because I was born that they got divorced, and because I was a girl that I got divorced. So I carried that. I never told my mom but I carried that as a young child, and it really marked me and scarred me in a lot of ways. And so my journey started as parenting with a control attitude and a fear minded, and not a good place to start. I'll be honest. We're being vulnerable and open, and my older kids more so suffered from that belief system that A plus B would equal C. And I was going to be bound and determined that that's what it would equal. And that started, yeah, that started a hard course of parenting.
I want to inject a recent story of where I feel you so much in just in our story as women trying to trying to be the best mom, trying to provide the best for our children because we believe that we know best.
Yep.
And that, hey, this is based on evidence. This is why I'm making this decision. So I'm potty training Parrish. He's 2.5, and 2 nights ago was like the second night we were trying, and I mean, he's worn a diaper for his life, and he went, he didn't want to put a diaper on at nighttime. And
Mm.
so brushing teeth is also a battle. So here we are getting ready for bed. And I have to alligator wrestle him to brush his teeth. And I'm like, I'm trying to do all this, like, but we have to brush the teeth. It's probably been like 2 days since we brushed the teeth last. So, here's a control thing that I'm wrestling against the wills. And then it's, we got to put a diaper on so they don't potty on because he's still co-sleeping. And it's just like, it makes my life easier if you wear a diaper. Thank you very much. Okay. I'm the one who has to do all the laundry, all that stuff. And so I'm like, just put the dang diaper on. And I lost my ever loving mind. And I was not proud. Like I was the picture of a hellish mother right there. And I spanked that poor little boy's butt. And
Mm.
I had such remorse and I felt so
Yeah.
awful, but I felt so out of control
Yep.
because, listen, it has to be this way. This is the only way that it makes sense. All the work is going to be put on me to wash all the things, and I don't want to do that. And I stepped away. I went into my room and was like, oh my gosh, you need to give me some answers here because right now I got nothing. I got absolutely nothing. And I like demanded, like somebody tell me something right now because this poor kid and this poor me. And
Mm.
and I finally, after like I had to take 2 or 3 of those breaks, and it realized, you know what? Stop it. Like my idea that it had to be this way. Well, could it possibly work another way?
Mhm.
Is he eventually going to learn potty training? Like, isn't it wonderful that he doesn't want to wear a diaper? Isn't that great? My gosh, it could just be the opposite where I'm trying to pull it off and he's screaming for me to put the diaper on. Like just like that feels so fresh to me. So you bringing that up is like, yes, thank you so much. Someone else who like understands the struggle when we feel like we are doing our best and we have our limited view, and
Mhm.
how I think when we can soften and realize that there might be alternatives. And what I realized for me, and I don't know, and I think what you're saying too, it's about identity. When our identities are threatened, when
Mhm.
we say, no, I'm going to be a good mom, I'm not going to let these things happen, they're not going to happen in my home. Or I know for me, concerned about I was concerned about how my husband would view me. Oh,
Mhm.
I'm being a bad mother. I'm not being adequate if I don't do this thing. Now he would listen to that and say, "What? I never." It's like, I know you didn't. That was
Yep.
me. That was my perception. I
Yep.
was putting it in my brain. But when our identity and our value gets questioned, then oh my gosh, all hell breaks loose and we lose our minds
Yep.
because we cannot be viewed as inadequate or as bad or so anyways, finally the end of that story is that I just let him just put his pants back on, and we put a puppy pad on the bed and he slept like that, and guess what, he was dry all night.
Mm. Yep.
How nice.
Yep.
But yeah, sometimes we go there and we do things that we regret because
Mhm.
I mean we're operating with the best information that we feel like we have. So it is hard. It is hard to look back and on our mistakes and go, man, I can't believe that was me. But hey, we have a chance to get to grow out of that. And you certainly have. So Back to you, Heather.
I don't know if I've grown out of it or not. I remember, my kids. My youngest is 14 now, and so I'm out of the thick of the young children, but I remember even when you were talking, I remember all those things flooding back. It had to be a certain way, and I think um, if I could go back in time, they say hindsight's 2020. There's a reason people have used that terminology because it's true. If I could go back to when my children were all small, and I mean, my oldest right now is 32, and my youngest is 14. So I knew when I was raising them, just as quick as they came, they would be leaving. I thought, man, they came quick, but once the first one starts leaving home, it's just going to be this progressive, and that's where I'm at now. Trying to hang on to these places where sometimes when you're raising a whole bunch of little children at once, it's like, and this is my life forever. I'm going to always be up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm never going to be able to go to the grocery store without a thought process of how long it's going to take to get in the car. And that was my mindset. I remember waking up in the morning sometimes and I would say, this is it. This is my day. It's 8 o'clock in the morning and I feel like I have been awake for a week. And how am I going to get through this day? And so that would rise up in my mind a control where I have to do things a certain way because if I don't, just like you said, it's going to make my life miserable. In some ways, I would get up and I look back and I thought of motherhood as a death sentence, and it's not supposed to be a death sentence. It's supposed to be life giving. Yes, we have to die to ourselves every day. I mean, motherhood is sometimes the most excruciating death because it's our flesh we have to die to every moment, especially with little ones in the physical realm. With the older ones, you die to your heart daily because there's things you can't fix in their lives. But um, it's a once I let go and realized that, like you said, there are different ways to doing things. There are some children who learn one way, some who learn a different way, and I learn a certain way. Sometimes you have to agree to disagree. You can't look at every child in the same, and I tried that for like my first probably 3 or 4 kids, poor things. This is the way it's going to be. This is the way we're doing it. Because if we don't, my life will end up miserable. And so it became this system of how to keep Heather safe, how to keep Heather in a place of, I guess, survival. You know, I would sometimes get to bed at night and be like, I can't believe we're all still alive. You know, I don't know how I got here in this bed and how their heads are on their pillows, but here we are. And tomorrow we get to do it all again. And I had to find, I tell one of my oldest, I tell actually my older children a lot. I had questions growing up. Well, how do you do it? How do you? And I'm like, one moment at a time. If I didn't take one moment, or even to this day, if I don't take one moment, you have to look at raising children. Yes, you have to think of the big picture, right? In certain, but you can't live there. You can't live every day in the future. But you also can't take those bad moments and live there either. You have to you have to figure out a way that will be, like you said, okay, there's another way to do things. I'm so thankful that, and I had to stop myself many times. I had 3 in diapers at one point and thinking, hey, at least I can afford diapers. I mean, you have to go there. Laundry, endless laundry. We went through 5 loads a day, had a horrible washing machine. Um, hey, I've got little bodies to mess up those clothes, and I do have the ability to wash, maybe not in the time frame I want to, but so, yeah, it's a mindset. It really is. And it's like I said, I think social media, if I would have had social media way back when I was raising children, I had enough problems of my own in my own mind and my own thoughts to do what people, the comparing and it will rob you of your moments that God is using those moments to get you to the next moment, not looking at somebody else's life, our own life and our own reflection of what this moment means, and not to live in those bad moments, but to take, I always call camel moments. And I've had this term for a long time where um, you take a moment, and like a camel lives off of the fat deposits in his body in the desert, when the days seem endless, and you take a sweet moment where a child, I asked my grandchild when I was there a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about God, and I said, what does love mean, Grayson? And he just ran to me and grabbed his arms around me and gave me the biggest hug. That's love, Mimi. And I lost it. I'm like, I had nothing else. I mean, that's love. And I have taken that moment, and I'm like, I even had this thought, all of those hard times of parenting, that's the next generation. And he knows love. And I'm like, if I would have seen that when I was raising my children, that my grandchild someday would run up to me and hug me, and he didn't want to let go. I'm like, okay, that's a camel moment, and in life, when you're raising little children, there's other things. Sometimes it's just their little hand on yours. That's my camel moment, that I have to remember to get through the next hard time. Remember that camel moment. Don't forget it, because they're everywhere. They're everywhere if you look for them. So,
Did you find journaling helpful, or like what is it? Like, what would you tell, like that to me is a nugget that you would tell your younger self. Hey,
yep.
Heather, just want to here's some wisdom for you. And I think a lot of mamas these days, despite being so connected, quote unquote, through social media, again with what you said, the comparison, the constant
Mm,
comparing.
yep.
How does that woman keep her house so clean? There's a gal who has 8 little children. They came like boom, 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 boom. And she cooks everything from scratch, and she shows her
Yeah.
beautiful spreads of her meals, and she constantly has videos like and her kids are all in matching outfits. Like,
Mm,
what team do you have behind you that you can, like,
mm,
my kids wear the same things for 3 days in a row because I don't care and they don't care, and they were not going to school. So, like, how we feel so much more isolated as moms. And I think, especially as moms of little people, where it does feel like you are in a Groundhog Day. And it feels like a prison sentence that, like, are you kidding me? This is my life,
yep.
and it will never ever end, and I never have a break. And my husband comes home from work and he's on his phone or he's playing video games, and then my job never ends. And, like, it is a season. And so what would you say to young mamas right now?
Um, it is a season, and I used to hear that growing up. That here's a little example. When my This is going to sound funny, but I like order a lot, to a fault, probably. When you have 12 children, it's almost impossible. But my mindset a lot of times when I was young is, if I don't have this in order, then I feel like chaos. And so I wasted so many hours trying to and that was before social media. I go back again, like, I felt the heaviness and the weight of what you were saying when you said there's this mama with 8 and she does everything from scratch, and I'm like, I mean, all of a sudden I'm like, oh no, that is the worst bondage that somebody can feel while you're watching that. I watched a TV show years ago, and it was a large family. It was about the only social media we had. You probably know who it is. And that all the kids were obedient, all that, and of course it's a TV show, so they're showing these highlights. And I felt the Holy Spirit say, don't ever watch that again. Because I would get off of that show and I would literally bulldoze for the next 2 days and try to get my life and my mindsets and my ways to look like them. A plus B would equal C. If I did things just like they did, then I would be free. Ha, no. It was more chains than freedom. And so I listened. I never watched it again. I never, because I knew how I felt after. I didn't feel free. I felt like my children were these horrible little monsters. Their children were these little angels. And if I would just do it the way they did, then just this comparison game. Um, and so I think the reality, I also think the generation that we're in, which I was having babies in the 90s, my grandma, my mom, um, I had the mindset where this is what I do. These are the roles that I have. My husband is amazing. He is absolutely amazing. But there were certain things that I still to this day do the cooking. I do the house, I do everything with that. Now, he will, if I ask him, he will definitely do it. And I do see a generation now where I think there are very good things about it. The men, their roles are in it a lot, more than what I had, and even my own thought process. But I think if I could go back, I would have a lot more grace with myself and definitely my children. My older ones had, I mean, I think my oldest, Lord help that poor kid. He he started doing all the family's laundry when he was like 6 years old, and he folded it. And I had this mindset, well, I got to build, he's got to be responsible, he's got to, and if I could go back, I mean, he's a great, he's a wonderful adult, and so, but if I could go back, I would be so much less of a bulldozer and more of a gardener. I just had to bulldoze everything because I thought, you got to clean up the bad stuff and get it out of here. And I didn't take time to really plant and to grow the things that were necessary. I just was so scared and fearful. And yeah, bulldoze. I bulldozed everything in my path because I felt like if I didn't, then it might grow something I didn't want it to grow. Instead of planting and gardening and kind of plucking the weeds out as they come, I just wanted to get rid of all of it in my path. And that's what I would go back and do different. And I think now my kids here, my older kids actually say I'm like a grandparent raising children because I'm so different. I've learned to pick my battles, and I've learned that some of their habits as young children are just because they're young children. It's not a reflection of my parenting. It's just because they're kids, or they're babies, or they're toddlers, and it's not a reflection of me. It's just because they're kids. And that was a hard transition for me. And some of my older kids didn't go and do the way that I thought they should when they were growing up. And so I got to a point in my parenthood where I said, I'm not doing anything like I did before. It's a total disaster. And so no, I'm going the total opposite way, and I'm doing it. And that wasn't good either. But I surrendered. I literally remember one morning I lifted my hands up and I said, God, how I've done this is not working. It's not working for me. It's not, they're surviving, but we're not thriving. And that was probably the turning point, where I realized they aren't my children. They're just on loan to me. And that took a lot of the pressure off of me. Like, it changed everything for me when I could look at it as that. And I look back with a lot of regret. I look back with, but I won't sit there. I want to learn from it. I want to have grace with my children and with me. I feel like the more I learn, the less I know. And that's not a bad thing. I've learned it's okay to agree to disagree with my husband on certain things because our goal is always the same. For the most part, our goals are to raise our children in the fear and admonition of the Lord and to teach them to love Jesus. And how we get there sometimes is a little different, but but that doesn't matter. It's okay to agree to disagree. And that's huge in a family life. I always thought my husband had to think the way I think. and I'm going to change him every day to see things the way I see them. And no, that's
Let's
not
go
a
in,
good
let's go into that because when you're talking about bulldozing and in your children, I know for me, if I'm doing something one way in my life, I'm gonna do everything in my life that way. And that goes for my relationship with my husband. So if I'm trying to control my kids, there's no way I can live in surrender to my
Yep.
husband or and
Yep.
my heart. So tell me about how you how that worked with your relationship with Joe.
I had certain expectations. I'll do the A plus B equals C. And I, my husband, bless his heart, he literally is the epitome of patience and grace. And there is our husbands, the relationship, we always say, oh, there's one in a relationship that's a morning person, one that's a night person, and that is definitely for us. I'm a morning person, get it done by 8 o'clock. My husband doesn't get started even mentally before noon. I'm go to bed early, he's stay up late. So even that little, and I remember many times on Saturdays when he was home from work and I had a certain way I did things every single day. And Saturday did not happen that way, because he was home. And I thought it'd be great that he was home, but most Saturday mornings ended up a total disaster because I didn't give up. I had to have things that way all the time. I mean, I literally every day ran the same, had to try, I at least tried to run it the same way every day. And so Saturdays were a mess. And my older children to this day will say we hated Saturday mornings. I'm just being vulnerable. We had our Saturday mornings were rough. And that's because I thought my husband had to do things the way we do them. And he would sit and play. And by 9 o'clock in the morning, they were bouncing off the walls. And I felt, oh my goodness, I've lost all control. So I would try to gain control again, try to do, and then he'd end up upset and we'd end up not talking the rest of the day because it didn't go the way I wanted him to go. And instead of looking back and saying, oh my goodness, he was with us, why didn't I just blow caution to the wind and say, it's a Saturday, dad's home, let's just be with dad. But no, I had to have it my way. And that was just an example. It was most like that all the time. um, I had to learn to let go and know that he Joe, my husband's philosophy in most areas where I would nitpick, he would say, Heather, what are you going to do about that? What are you going to do about it? And I would sit there, well, I don't know, but I have to do something. And he's like, no, you don't. You don't have to have an answer for everything. And it would stop me and I would say, you're right. And I would sit there and I'd try to think of an answer. And I'd be like, with some of these things, I don't have an answer. And he would say, good. And then I'm like, well, what are you going to do with this, or this? And he said, I don't know. We'll know when we get there. And if we don't, we figured it out. They'll figure it out. And so there was a grace over that for me. I had to, instead of all these places of I had to get everything figured out, he would say, no, it's okay not to have everything figured out. And he's right. And once I learned to let go of those places, my relationship with my children grew. Um, it there's ebbs and flows, I'll say, in a big family. You have seasons, I guess you would call it. But I think the most important thing that I've learned is that it's okay to have a different perspective, and it's okay to see things. It's beautiful actually to see things differently, to communicate. This is why I see it this way. Well, this is why I see it this way. Well, what's your goal in this? Oh, that's my goal too. And then, oh, okay. So coming together on that realm, it's essential. I mean, there's no other, if you're always in conflict and you're always looking at what you have to do and what you don't get to do or what they get to do and that you're not able to do, and you will get such a vicious circle of never being content, never being satisfied. it, and you'll sit in it and it feels yuck. And then you won't like yourself. You won't like your husband. You won't like how your life is. Before you know it, you'll start looking at somebody else's life and you'll think, oh, they've got it all together. And then you start hating your life. You think, oh my goodness, what am I doing here? And then it just grows and it grows. And before you know it, you can't you can't get out of it. And so that's the one thing, that epiphany that I had one time, that, oh, it's okay to not agree how he sees things. He's not me and I'm not him. And that's why we're together. It's a beautiful thing. It's not a bad thing.
Yeah, we need each other to complement each other. And yeah, I think that the aspect of control is, I'd say, women's greatest struggle. Like if we could all just flip a switch and be just chill and surrendered and feel like, you know what, I know the world's not going to fall apart if I am not trying to control everything, if I'm not driving and dictating everything. That, and I think a lot of that is we didn't feel secure when we were little. We didn't, we're not able to trust that, have, like, I don't have faith that God's going to take care of me, or the universe, or whatever it is that you believe, that I feel the world is a scary, dangerous place. There have been many times in my life where I've had this sense that, oh my gosh, the earth is hurtling through space. Nobody's in control of that. And oh my gosh, why are we all freaked out? I'm freaked out. And like, that is not a good place to live from when you feel like you're on a runaway train. And well, at least a train has tracks and is going one place, but you're hurtling through space. Oh my gosh, there's no tracks on that. So when we have that sense of like, I am on a grand scale, I am taken care of. I am going to be okay. Oh my gosh. You mean I can let go? I don't have to hold on to it all. And I don't have to control my husband. And and there's also this fear of, I know I have this deep-seated fear of being wrong. And that's, from being raised in a home where, oh no, you get in trouble. Everybody's going to have that, to some extent. But some of us have it a little stronger than others, where if I'm seen as dumb or wrong, those are about the worst things you could say about me. Like, I may not feel like I'm the prettiest girl in the patch. That's okay. That's fine. But you call me dumb, you call me wrong. Oh, them's fighting words. And so if we're able to, like, oh, that doesn't define me. I don't believe that I'm dumb, and I believe that it's okay to not always be right. Like, oh, I'm not going to get flogged for being wrong, or that it's a lesson to learn. And that's something in the modern parenting that I am thankful for, of the, oh, mistakes are called learning opportunities. They're not something that you're going to get your butt whooped for and sent to the corner. And that's another thing. And I just recognize, again, because it's so fresh in my mind, that potty training incident that I had, that just broke my heart and broke my child's heart. And where we were both in isolation. And when we
Mm,
live in isolation, that's why community is so stinking important, especially for us as women, that we
yeah.
need each other, and that we need to be in groups that are supportive of us, that see you in your young motherhood. And like, I've had friends and kind of acquaintances that wanted to, get together, but they had no way to relate to where I'm at in my life
Mhm.
with as many children as I have. And it always seemed like my children were an inconvenience to our conversation happening. And yeah, I know this is a digression, but you know what it's like when you're a mom with little kids and all you want to have is a good, long, grown up talk. And you can't because you keep getting interrupted and you can't remember what you were talking about before because someone needed to have their dress up dress put on. And the other
Mhm.
one said, no, help me build my Lego. And oh, this car is stuck. And like, oh my gosh, can you evaporate for 10 minutes so that I can have a conversation? And like, yes, it's a real thing. And we need to be in community with other women who at least can, if they're not in that stage, they get it. and
Yep.
that we don't feel that pressure. And that's part of the people pleasing in us also, is like, well, I want to make this person feel like I'm fun, and then that they're interesting, and that we're having a dynamic conversation, and that's called a friendship. And I want to play good together there, but you don't always get to have that when you have a busy household. So how did you find community, or what was your story of finding that support? Because oh my gosh, when you're deep in it and the babies keep coming, and
Mm-hmm.
and then so after we talk about support, I want to talk about how you decided to have 12 children. So let's go into how you found um, that sisterhood, or didn't.
I think when I first started having children, my mom we lived close at that time, and I mean, every day, she was my lifeline, definitely. And then we moved away, and just a couple hours, but it was a long time. And then at that point, I sought out. I am a very close friend type of person. I'm not the kind of person that needs 20 women in my life. Give me two good friends that I can just be myself with, that I don't I was going to say too, I think a lot of women, me included, I feel like we have to have all the answers. And you said don't tell me I'm wrong. Don't do that. I fear that. But once I let go of, like, you know what? I would talk to other women, and they would be like in the same boat I was. Like, "Oh, you don't have all the answers. You don't know what to do with this either." I mean, right now I'm going through teenagers. I hate to keep sticking on this. I don't mean to, but I don't know what to do with the gaming world and social media world. I have teenage boys. I don't know. I don't have an answer for that right now. I've gone through so many so many like stages of parenting. Like I said, I started back in the 90s. I'm still parenting teenagers. So, and now I've got grandbabies. So, my community, we moved to a Mennonite community back in 1999. And at that time I had four. And I knew at that time that we were going to have as many children as God allowed us to have. And so I didn't know, but when we moved to that community, I belonged to a MOPS group, and that was my lifeline. There were other women who had many children. I only had four at the time, but it seemed like a lot then. And they took me in. They made me meals. I had another friend that we would switch once a week. They would come to my house once a week, and then the next week I would go to theirs. So we could get out for a day, and we could go shop, or we could run errands. Usually we'd take the baby with us, or just be alone. Um that was my lifeline. And I we just sat and watched the kids play. And I had another woman that they filtered into their life system with me. And that, honestly, that was probably, looking back, I always said it was a piece of heaven for me, because I was in a surrounding, that environment, that, I don't know if this is the right word, that accommodated my belief system and the way that I was doing things at the time. That's not always going to be the case, because then we moved from that, where we moved to a place where I had no support. And but that also defined a lot in me too, where I knew where I stood at that point. But I think looking for a place, whether it's just one friend, um, that you are doing life together as much as you can. When you're young, it's hard to be a good friend. When you have a lot of young children, it's really hard. And if somebody has those expectations of you, it's probably not going to put you in a good place, if they don't understand that, hey, my family comes first at this point, and I had plans with you. I have to break them. I'm sorry. And you have to be, oh, it's okay. I totally understand. A place of grace. And that's been my lifeline. And it I don't go and seek out a lot of friendships, but like you, when you came along, you were just there. It was like, oh, this is what I needed, you know? And I think it's scary as a young mom that people will see you how you really are. You know, when you were talking about you had to go, you know, and I was just having an image of that like so many times I would lose my ever loving mind with the young kids, you know, when three of them are pulling on you and you have no like social distance whatsoever. And, you know, and realizing that, oh my goodness, there's another mother out there who sometimes feels like she can't breathe. She can't catch her breath. I had a mother one time say, she had a lot of children, she had 9, and she said, it's okay that sometimes at the end of the day, it just feels like survival mode. It's okay. And I was like, oh, it is? You know, because I thought, oh, I'm not supposed to live in this survival. And I don't think that's where we're supposed to stay. But there are some days it's going to be literal survival for everyone. And I don't want it to stay that way, but some days it is. And it's okay. And then when you go to the next season in your life where like now sometimes I actually for the first time in 30 years worked outside of the home when we moved to Florida, and I was an overnight doula with all kinds of newborn babies, and it was such a joy. And I would get home and I'd be like, nobody needs me here. Nobody needs me. And I thought, I never dreamed I would feel that way. Like it's not that they don't need me, it's that the physical demands are less. But my level of comfort was always meeting their expectations physically. You know, got to do this, got to do that, got to do this. And like we had company on Saturday, and my daughter, older daughter, said, are you getting the house clean? And I'm like, well, the house is already clean. And I thought, never thought I'd say those words. It happens. It does happen. And the illustration I was going to use is when my kids were young, there was fingerprints always all over the windows, all over the doors, all, you know, and I would every day, I kid you not, try to get those fingerprints off. Well, my kids come to visit now, and I'm 1,200 miles away from them, and my grandbabies will come. And we have big sliding doors, and I intentionally leave their fingerprints on the windows. I don't want to not see those little fingerprints. I I'm like, what was I thinking to wash those off when my kids were growing? Those are imprints of life. That's life. And so I mean, my kids came back in October and my grandsons got fingerprints, and I will not wash them off. I won't do it. It's that level of realizing that it's, it's a good motherhood is life. It's like I go, it's not a death sentence. It's life. And if you can find those moments and you can find them with other people, it's nothing I loved more than to walk into somebody's house that looked like a train wreck because and then I could let down my guard. And we always have this thing, you know, it's got to look a certain way. It's got to be this. And my worst enemy, my husband always tells me, is myself. Um, you know, I've always found the most comfort in people who are vulnerable, who are real. And I refuse to pretend like I have it all together, and I don't. I could sit here and tell you story after story from a 3-year-old driving my car down a retaining wall, 15-foot retaining wall, to one of my children eating a bullet. I mean, I was a good mom, you know? Um, yeah, to, yeah, but the stories could grow. I can only tell you. And my kids have more that I'm like mortified. Like, where was I? I thought I was there all the time. Oh no, mom, you weren't there. You didn't, you know, that's part of motherhood. I used to have guilt for that. Now it's like, okay, that's kind of funny. So yeah, you have to find, some women need 20 women. I don't. I need 1 or 2 real people that will say, you're not in this together, that will come up to my house. I had one lady one time, I was overwhelmed. Her kids were grown. She came in, she said, sit on the couch. I want you to do nothing. And she said, I'm going to go in with your kids and I'm going to make your meal for tonight. And she did. She came in and she just took over for like 3 hours. And we talked while she was doing it. And, you know, my kids to this day absolutely adore her because she loved them. She invested in them also. And that's important too. Have friends who will invest in your children's lives. And that's, you know, even now with being 54. I have to surround myself with women who are in my life stage, but now I can also want to be a blessing to the mothers who are young and say, it's okay. It's okay to not have it all together. In fact, don't try. Let it go. So that's,
Oh, that's so, yes. I feel so comforted and edified just listening and going, this was really nice. Thank you, Heather, for helping me feel like it's okay that I screw up and that I'm not
yeah.
perfect.
Mm-mm.
And yeah, we need that. We desperately need that. How do you find where should okay, so just talking about finding friends.
Yeah.
I find friends in grocery stores. Like I have one of my dear friends here. I saw her in a grocery store. She's just like something about her struck me. I went up
Yeah.
and paid her a compliment, and we just kind of chit chatted, and we saw each other going out the like same direction in the parking lot. I was like, I know this is weird, but can I have your number? Do you want to be friends? And you can find, go up um to other moms at the playground and plan another play date, meet up there again, do something, and then see how it develops. I know that I don't know about you. Have you ever made a mistake where you jumped into a friendship and you're like, oh yeah, we have so much in common, this is great, and then you realize, oh, who did I invite into my life?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, I think there's a lot of times in my life where my husband is the exact opposite. He's such an introvert, and really all the friends we've ever found are because of my connections and my lifeline. That's not a downfall in his, but now it's funny because the older he gets, he'll say, "I have somebody I want you to meet." He can identify, and he hasn't been wrong to this day. So I think it's interesting. But when we first moved here to Florida, my husband was a children's pastor back in Iowa, and I met some connections through there. But it's really funny because sometimes the times where I was not seeking friendship at all were the times where I have found my deepest connections. And those times where I tried to go out and find my own friends, and it ended up being empty relationships. And I'm not sure what that is for sure, except when we moved here, we'd been here about, I don't know, 2 months. And I'm like, God, I have no friends. I have no, and I felt the Holy Spirit say to me, it's because they distract you. And that was a big moment for me. Like, we need connection. Don't get me wrong, we need that. But sometimes we feel, and this is probably where friendships can go wrong, where we're looking for something, we're looking for a connection, but it's maybe in a place where that connection could be damaging. It's those places where we're still, and we're like I said, when we moved to the small Mennonite community, I wasn't looking for friends. I mean, they literally found me, and they were my lifeline at that time. And then once you start to build those friendships, I do think that a lot of times life itself weeds out the the relationships that aren't going to put you in a thriving, friendship. I've had that happen where I'm like, man, I haven't heard from them for a couple weeks, or I haven't called them. Oh no, And then you're like, oh, I don't know if that was really the best friendship to keep going. The friendships can be draining. Like I said, when you're a young mom, you have to, if you don't have somebody who doesn't understand, that's a no-go. I mean, they have to understand the life situation that you're in. I also think that friends edify. They lift you up, they build you up, they encourage you. Um, and those are the friendships that I have been so graced with, no matter where I've lived, no matter what season I've been in. And I also think that it's so important for the older women to encourage and stand beside and walk with um, the younger women. And those are some of the best friendships I've had. And some of the women that I did when I was in my 20s that I had, they're gone now. They're like, we're in their 80s, 90s when they died, but they were my foundation to why I believe now, and how motherhood was what it was. So that's important too. It's okay to have friendships that are way older women. I encourage it. I encourage it.
Yeah, I agree with that. So I have one gal in particular was my mentor when I was in my late teens, and she's been like a beacon for me
Mm,
throughout the years. And when you have what you're saying about friendship and like that it's edifying, and I have a friend who, whenever I get together with her, she has littles, and she's beautifully natural in so many of the ways that she lives, and I wish that I could live a homesteady life like she does. And I love the choices, observing the choices she's making as a mama. She has like really limited electronics with her kids, and I'm like, oh man, wouldn't that be nice? That'd be really, really nice. I don't know how my boys are gonna function, which is like, oh, that's sad. Just to like
yeah.
to admit that, like, oh,
Yeah.
anyway, it's a hard.
But
That's
see,
my
even
whole life.
that edified me. Even you saying that, I was like, oh my goodness, like a light bulb went off, like, oh, you struggle with that too, or not even a struggle. I mean, sometimes I've just given into that fact. Like, my kids are going to be on electronics. What am I going to do right now? And just hearing you say that, it
Yeah.
brought relief to my heart. Like, oh, it just took that heaviness away.
There is so much mom guilt. There really is.
Yes.
Of like, I'm doing
Yep.
it wrong. I'm damaging my kids.
Yes.
I don't know what to do. And I know my husband often says like, if you're concerned, if you're a good parent, if that's a worry of yours, like, gosh, I hope I'm being an okay parent. Like, I wonder if that's all you need. Like, oh, that
Yes.
thanks. That really lets me off the hook on so many levels.
Yep.
But I mean, giving ourselves some slack. But
Yes.
but just going back to like finding people, like when I hang out with that gal and her, um, she what I love the most is how much she embodies her motherhood.
Mm.
And I think so much of the time we fight our motherhood, like I should be doing more, or oh my gosh, I can't believe everything that I do gets undone and I have nothing to show. I know I am a producer. I am someone who I want to make something and I want to be able to show the world. I want to have show and tell because Kelly wants to have value. Like, look at my value. Look at the things I can do. Like, did I draw a pretty picture? Everyone, tell me, like literally. And there's where was my
And
point?
think about if you're like that. And I used to do this with my children. Look at them. Look at them. I would have people tell me somebody wanted us to lead a parenting class when we were really young, and our kids, like our oldest was 6 or 7, and your kids are so well behaved. And my husband was the one that said, you do not want to be under a microscope at that point in your life, because just because we look like we have it all together. And I was so thankful for his wisdom in that. But when your children are being used to project how wonderful you are, and then they mess up, and it's like, oh my goodness, and that can happen. I'm just like you. I want to be known. Had a silk floral business. I want to be known, and I want to be, not in a bad way all the time, but in a lot of ways, growing up with my older children that were young, I wanted to project them as a reflection of my great parenting. And uh that's heavy.
Totally.
So
Well, we were commercial actors in Austin before we moved here, and we went and auditioned as family. And when our kids would like say some of the craziest things, like I am going to strangle you after this. I cannot believe you embarrassed me hardcore.
yep,
Like, how
yep,
could you act that way? Don't you know how to do this? Have we not gone over it? Anyway, it's such a reflection on us. You're like, you made that kid? Like, yeah, I
yeah,
made that kid. I'm sorry. And it was like, ouch. And
yeah.
yeah, how we like, oh, my child, did you see them in the thing? Yes, they are the star of the thing. Aren't I special? See my shiny
Uh-huh.
crown
Yep,
of best
yep,
mother of the year? Like, yeah, no, no. And again, when you have so many children and you see like some kids, they're just raring to go. They're going to go conquer the world, and they're like they succeed at whatever they do. And then you've got other kids that don't want to do anything. You're like,
yep.
oh my gosh, I made them both. guess what? I can kind of take no credit for them at all. They are the people they're
Yes.
going to be. And honestly, I generally can just get in the way of who
Yep.
they're going to become.
Yep.
And like the seed for me, and you had said this before, like when Grayson ran up to you and gave you a great big hug and said, "This is, this is my show of what love is." I mean,
Hmm.
honestly, it's just been in the last couple of weeks where I realized I think the best thing I can do as a mom is cover my children in love. Now,
Yep.
that does not mean permissiveness,
Right.
but that also does not mean utter like crackdown under control. This is, lockdown at the house. But
Well, it's always the motivation of love. We're, we parent with the motivation of love, and
but
that
and
covers a lot.
we can't be that way if we don't feel it too. And
Yes.
that so much of the things that you're saying just really resonates with me of like if I'm not okay, I can't mother okay. I can't
Hmm.
mother better. I can't make better choices operating from empty. If I'm
Yep.
feeling inadequate or I have to, my value is in what I produce or what I show up, that's what my value is, then
Hmm.
I'm just reflecting that to my kids. I'm sorry, honey, but you're not valuable unless you have good grades or your room is clean or you did everything on your list. Now you can receive my love. I mean,
Hmm.
oh, ouch.
I'm
I know I do
guilty.
that sometimes. Yes. And I was like,
Yeah.
wow, 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 wow. That's
Hmm.
not what and I can't be perfect. And I feel like the world is telling us we have to be Mr. Rogers and just be
Yeah.
sweet, sing-songy, gentle. You can't do that when you've got a child, you know, running around with a broken glass, threatening another kid. Like that didn't really happen, but like it
Oh, it
feels
has
that
in my
way.
house.
Yeah, right. And you're like, oh my good Lord, yelling's gonna happen right now because everybody needs to freeze and
Yeah.
stop what you're doing and redirect. But yeah, how do you, so I know you are a woman of deep faith, and that is really the source for you of how you get filled up.
Yep.
Um, so what do you recommend to like other women who have also been feeling, because I think we do this is just kind of how we operate from. For the most
Hmm.
part, we're like, oh yeah, I remember I should fill up my cup, but
Hmm.
I did that maybe 3 months ago.
Hmm.
So what are your thoughts for women?
It's kind of funny. I actually thought about this uh, yesterday, and I think in those places where I feel drained, overwhelmed, um, honestly, some days like I don't know how I'm going to do this. I don't know, or I don't know what to do. My biggest way that I have learned to deal with that is gratitude. And that sounds so cliche. When I start to feel that draining of I'm not enough, I don't have enough, this is going to be this way forever, whether it be finances, whether it be a child who is just in flat out rebellion. I have an autistic child who oh my goodness, for years, I thought, I don't know how I'm going to do this. And I think I literally would sit down. I have pages and pages, probably notebooks full of having to sit down and have a heart of gratitude. Because what I realized is when I started to feel drained and I started to feel these places of I'll never be able to do this. It was where my heart was starting to get a self attitude where, so it's kind of ironic because you say self-care, we need self-care, and we have to fill those cups. Mine is every day. And now when you're a young mother, I remember doing this every morning, and it would without fail, nobody'd get up before 6 o'clock until I'd go to read my Bible and pray, and then 5:03 somebody would be up, throwing up or whatever, and but it's the motivation of the heart at that point. And I have to take, now I have the time, and I have that time of refreshing in the morning to read my Bible and to pray. And I woke up the other day and I heard the Holy Spirit say, this is my day. And I was like, well, usually I come from this, okay, I'll give my time up to and then it's my day. And what am I going to do with my day? And I thought, wow, really, this isn't my day. It's filled with family. It's filled with, yeah, grocery shopping, cooking. Really, there's nothing about this that's my in my in my day. But how do I make that work? And it's a gratitude. It's a heart of gratitude that I can always look at somebody who has more than me. I can always find somebody who has less. Every single day. And a lot of times with my children when they were younger, I would get up and I would feel drained. And I would say, you know what we're going to do? We're going to make a meal for somebody. We're going to find a way to get our self mindset off of self, and we're going to do something for somebody else. And I know self-care, that sounds a total opposite of what it should be. Like, you think of self-care, oh, we need to go get our nails done, or we need to, and I'm not saying there's not a place for that. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is usually it's reaching outside of self for self care. And it's a heart of gratitude. And it's sitting down with paper and a pen and saying, this is what I have right in this moment to be. And I guarantee you, sometimes it'll take a few minutes because your mind is going with all these things you want to complain about. But um, I heard this a while back, and it said, complain, you'll be drained. Praise, and you will be raised. And it made such an impact on me that when I have a heart of complaining and I just want to go do something by myself, and there's a place for that. Like I said, don't hear what I'm not saying. But when you're a young mom, let's get real. Sometimes you don't have more than 30 seconds. But you can sit down with a piece of paper, keep a journal by your bed, keep one on the coffee table, and just have a pen or something that if your kids get into it won't matter, and write it down, and one thing at that moment that you're grateful for. And what you'll find is you'll start thinking from that place, and you will find something to be grateful for. So that's my, and that's been for years that I've had to do that.
Beautiful. And what a wonderful way to wrap it up with Thanksgiving as well. This is
Yeah,
that time of
yeah.
year where we get to reflect on that. Oh my goodness. Heather, thank you so much for sharing
Oh,
your
thank
heart.
you.
I feel like we could have like six more of these just and then we would finally scratch the surface. But
Well,
thank
I anytime. It's been an honor and a
is there
blessing.
is there anything that you want to share, any resources, anything that you would, any shout outs that you want, but to I'm gonna give you some space.
Um, no, I would say that, connection is first and foremost. And a lot of times that just comes from a place of lowering your expectations of self and realizing that my daughter says this sometimes, like a hot mess. I don't even mean that negatively, but if you're easy on yourself and you have grace with yourself, you'll begin to have more grace with your children, and you'll start to, and your husband and your relationships. We don't need a fine-tooth comb every day to go through life. You can go through life and realize that every day is not going to require the same thing. What today may require is going to be probably different than yesterday, and your tomorrow is going to be probably different too. But if you live in that moment and realize the bad ones that you have are a bad moment. It's not a bad day. Was very careful to never end my day. Oh, that was a terrible day. No, it wasn't. No, you may have had some things that went wrong that were not good, but very rarely could you ever get through a day and say that whole day was horrible. And so I would say the biggest life giving for me, obviously, is the Word of God. Um, it's a wellspring and of life. And remember every day that motherhood is not a death sentence. It's life-giving. And if you can come from that attitude that, wow, today isn't my funeral. It's a day to bring on whatever it has. Everybody has something to offer somebody else today. And for young moms, it's their children, and that's where it's at. I mean, that's where life is. That's where life is. And look for those moments. Look for those camel moments.
Thank you so much, Heather. Just in wrapping up, that reminds me of, I was looking at my table and I was feeling so overwhelmed because there was kid stuff everywhere, an explosion of markers and paper and Play-Doh. And I just took a deep breath, and I looked at it and went, someday there will be no more Play-Doh on my table. That is so sad. Like these little people years, as overwhelming as they can be, are some of the greatest gold I will ever. That's why I don't feel like I'm done having kids, because I don't want this to end. And I know eventually I'll have grandkids, I hope, but it's, I know the value of this and I don't want it to end. Yes,
Yeah.
girls, we can be so much more gracious to ourselves, and
Mm,
we don't have to have it all figured out. And we need each other, and we need to rest in gratitude when we feel so drained. So go find a journal that lights up your heart when you look at it and go, ooh, that's mine. Get a pen and let's start filling those up. Thank you, Heather, so much for
thank
being
you,
here.
Kelly. It's been an honor. Thank you.
If today's conversation stirred something in you, I'd love to stay connected. The very best place to find me and to really be a part of what we're building is on Substack. That's where I share my weekly letters, the behind the scenes of our family life, and the deeper teachings that I can't always fit into the podcast. So you can join me at wholewomanawakening.substack.com. And if you're listening on a podcast app, following the show helps more women find these conversations. I am so glad you're here. Thank you for being part of this awakening.